Yo, what up, everybody? Thanks for taking the time to check this video out. I go by the name of Dashawn Designs, and I just wanted to create a quick little process video, kind of showing how I go from sketch to final image. Hopefully by watching this, you'll be able to take home some tips or some pointers, or just anything at all from the video that you'll be able to use in your own projects. With that said, let's get started. Now, the software I like to use when I draw is Procreate. You can use the same process that I use in any other drawing app, but for me personally, Procreate is a lot more easy to use. Photoshop, you gotta is mainly used for photo manipulation. You can draw in it, and I used to use Photoshop before I discovered Procreate, but I feel like Procreate is more of a drawing app, so it's easier to navigate in it, and it's just set up better for drawing. Now, before I create anything, the first layer I put on the page is a sketch layer. On my sketch layer, that's where I'm kind of filling things out and figuring out what I'm gonna draw and exactly what shapes I'm gonna use for the drawing. Gesture drawings and just real loose sketchy stuff on this layer. I'm experimenting on my sketch layer. So on your sketch layer, that's where you kind of figure things out. And I like to use a red pencil because when you're working with these apps, these drawing apps, you can end up with a lot of layers. So if you use red in the beginning, it's kind of easier to see it in the long run. So after I create my sketch layer and I'm figuring everything out and kind of got things where I want it to look, I drop the opacity and I create a layer on top of that. The second layer I create is my line art layer. Now on this layer, that's where I'm more definite with my pen strokes and I'm tracing over the things I want to keep and the stuff that I want to erase, I'm letting it go. If you want to look at your sketch layer as pencil, your line art layer is like marker. So of course you can make mistakes, but you kind of want to make all your mistakes on your sketch layer. Your line art layer is more of the definite, it's kind of locking stuff in. It's kind of the layer that you're going to look at like, okay, this is the direction we're going in. And once I'm happy with my line art layer, once again, I drop the opacity on that layer and I create a third layer. Now the third layer is my color layer. And that's gonna go in between your line art layer and your sketch layer. You wanna sandwich it in between those two. And on this layer, it's kind of just self-explanatory. You wanna fill in your colors and your definites and you know what I'm saying? Like your skin tones, the clothes, anything that's gonna have a solid color, you put it on your color layer. And you do this because if you create everything on one layer, the farther along you get, the harder it's going to be to manipulate them layers. So you definitely want to make sure you separate everything in layers. Now, once you got your color layer, what I usually do is I erase my sketch layer and I create another layer on top of everything. That's my shadow layer. Now, a lot of people like to use black on their shadow layer. Me, personally, I like to use the color that I'm already working with. For example, if I'm using like brown, like he is for the skin tone, I color pick that brown. I get I select a darker shade of brown, change my layer to a multiply layer, and that's what I paint my shadows with. And also I drop the opacity on that layer so your shadows are a little transparent. You want to be able to kind of see through your shadows. You don't want a hard shadow unless that's the direction you're going in. You know what I'm saying? But I like to use a lighter shadow on my layers. Now, another option, people like to add a light layer. You make a shadow layer and it will make a light layer. In this particular piece, I didn't add a light layer, but normally I would. And that would be the same process. You would just pick a color that's already in your image. And instead of going darker, you would go lighter. And you would paint that over the drawing to bring your lights. So then you have your lights and your shadows. Another thing I like to do is once I got my color layer down, my line art layer down, and my shadow layer down, I make another layer on top of everything. And it's my second line art layer. Now on that layer, I'm even more precise on what I'm doing. I'm making different weights for the lines and make one line thicker, one line thinner. For example, his lips will be a thinner line than the outline of his clothes. You know, so you want to do that on your second line art layer. Because when you look at art, you want to be able to, you want your eye to flow through the art. You know, so when you play with different line weights and strokes and widths, it helps your eye move through the drawing a little bit better. You know, and when that's all done, one last thing I like to do, as I like to, if I got my image on the screen, you know, I take off the background and any other art that's on there and just keep the main image. And I go through and erase any overspray. So when you watch it, if you see the screen turn black with just the image there, that's me looking at the overspray I did. Like sometimes I might color out the lines or make a stroke that I didn't mean to make. So that's what I would do. I would take all the backgrounds out, zoom in, and erase anything I oversprayed on. And it just makes everything a little more crisp. You know what I mean? It's just something that I like to do. Not everybody does it, but I find like it works good for me. And it's coming on right now. If you look on his feet, you can see there's a little bit of overspray. You know what I'm saying? Get rid of that, put everything together, put a dope background, and there we go. You know, so I hope you had a good time watching this video. Hopefully you was able to take some tips or some hints from it. Maybe be able to use it in your own artwork. And you can also follow me on all social media at Dashawn Designs. Thanks again for watching. Talk to you guys soon. Peace.